Welcome, Moosin here, welcoming you to another Duel Links video. And in this one I wanted to go slightly more into what's meta. I tend to just play a little bit like rogue decks and things like that and whatever I feel like playing really, but I wanted to take a look because I've recently been working through Warriors United box. I am a little bit behind on Warriors United obviously, because I do just tend to grind out gems and just try and get the cards at my own rate. But I've got a pretty decent collection, obviously, now. So I want to sort of re-examine 6 Sams and see how it fits into the meta. Now that the new boxes came out, now that we're very much in the post-Neo structure deck, and it's getting more and more optimized. So as far as what's in this deck, as far as what's in the deck, it's pretty standard stuff, to be honest, I think. It's got around 3 United, 3 Asceticism, 3 Dojo, 2 Dual Wield, 3 Fuma, 3 Kigeki, 3 Anishi, and 2 Kizan. And I run 2 Shien. Just a charge warrior. I don't tend to use it. I've just got it in there for the lols. Just around a 5-card side deck. And the 2 Giganti Castle. Now, the Gigantic Castles are important and the Shiens are important. Shiens, obviously, it's the goal of the deck to synchro into Shien. And Gigantic Castles are for synchroing off a Lava Golem with Fumas, in case that comes up. And beyond that, it's pretty self-explanatory. We've got Pot of Greed. Asceticism, there's a fair bit of plays you can make with Asceticism. You can use it on Fuma to pull Kigeki. You can use it on Kigeki if there's another one on the field to pull Fuma. And you can use it on a Kigeki before the card that you might have in hand actually enters the field. So obviously this, you can special summon another level 4. But you can chain a Asceticism to it before it enters the field to pull a Fuma. So that's obviously another cool combo. It's pretty versatile, it's pretty useful. Obviously this is useful. It allows you to go 4 or 4 into 1. That's pretty much it. Although if you do have a dojo early enough and you already have a Fuma, you can wait for this to get to 4, which lets you summon an Anishi from the deck on the first turn. That's another possibility. And obviously the Pot of Greed's just more draw into Asceticisms, into Kizans, into Dual Wields, all the good stuff. And I just decided to use Yami-Yugi because I wanted to level up Yami-Yugi. Obviously, Tie the Binds is a good skill to use with this. I'm using Destiny Jaw just because Yami-Yugi does not have Tie the Binds. I didn't have all the skills, but still. That's a deck. Yeah, whatever. Just save that. Pretty sure nothing changed. And so I have some replays ready. And just sort of talk through different matchups I went through. So there was Crowler match. Let's go versus Jade and Yuki. I think this was the first one. Let's see. Let's see what this one was. I think this might have been a Neos match. So, in my opinion, the Neos match is a bit of a 50-50 for a couple of different reasons. This list that he was running might not have been the most optimized, but you know. So he's running the sort of more Neo space centric Neos fusion, which might not be the best way of doing it. It might still be a good way of doing it. Who knows? It's still kind of a new archetype, so it's kind of hard to tell. So obviously he goes for the Neos fusion. He ditches his Neos cards into the graveyard. One reason why this variant might not be the best is because ditching things like Bacon Savers into the grave and other cards like that benefit being in the graveyard is a better way of going about it. Whereas just Neos cards don't do anything in the grave, I'm fairly certain. Other than, of course, Neos fusion. He's got some protection here. So one thing you notice is 6 Sams is still pretty consistent in doing its 6 Sams thing, you know. Using your spell support, using his 6 Sam support to get out Shien. It can do it pretty consistently. So right now we're uniting before we summon Fuma with our dojo. I could have just went, placed the dojo and placed the Inishi down. I think I decided not to, because I wanted more things on the board and I wanted to try and pull, because if I get another asceticism, I can asceticism this to pull a another Shien after the fact and just bounce this, and I won't have to wait for the dual wield. Unfortunately, we don't end up drawing that. We don't end up drawing the asceticism for afterward. But we pull the Fuma. We go into Shien. At this point, we can Pot of Greed again, so I have one more chance to get the asceticism. We pull it this time. So now on a Kageki, I can get a Inishi. And at this point, I can bounce. I don't have to worry about the Neos Fusion in the grave. And we're good to go. Now, the reason why it was kind of 50-50. Alright, so what he did, I think, was just to summon the 1 to play around a potential dual wield. If they're going to go up against 6 Sams, it plays around Lava Golem by not playing another monster and not playing any backline, right? But I think because 6 Sams is still fairly versatile, if you play around the dual wield, you play into getting blown out by Inishi, right? And if you play around Inishi by having multiple monsters, you play into dual wield. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's really tough to play around those kinds of players that 6 Sams can still produce. The reason why it was still a 50-50 is because even if I bounce this, it's again more optimized versions of the Neos Fusion deck run Sphere Kuribo, and if you just Sphere Kuribo to Shien, this isn't enough to do lethal. I could be triggering card draw effects, and you could just follow it up and probably blow me out the water. It might be tough to come back from that. You know what I mean? They could still be running Lava Golem, but because they played it fairly conservative on his first turn, I managed to blow him out of the water. And I'm guessing he wasn't running Sphere Kuribo, or that wouldn't really have happened, really. So that was the Jaden Yuki match. Now versus Seto Kaiba. I think this was another really quick surrender, but I still I'm pretty sure it was versus Blue Eyes, and although I think he had a pretty bricky hand and he ended up conceding fairly quickly, I still want to just talk about how you want to set up and what plays you kind of want to make against a potential Blue Eyes. So there's sort of two ways you can go about it, right? You can be super conservative and not summon many things. It plays around your Lava Golems and things like that, or you can overextend and develop a large board. I go for large board here because I'm thinking, if it's going to be a Blue Eyes deck and I have multiple things on the board, I can protect my Shien that I do summon. I can protect my Shien by destroying other 6 Sam monsters. So having more monsters on the field gives my Shien more protection, and if I can do that, it's more likely I'll be able to survive another turn for one, and not just get sort of Blue Eyes OTK'd, and maybe draw a dual wield and things like that. So we go for United. I can asceticism, as I was talking about earlier. You summon this, you activate its effect to summon Inishi, and you chain that before it actually gets summoned. Allows you to pull the Fuma. Which gives you your 1 and your 4. The downside is you potentially miss a charge on Dojo, but it's not a huge deal. and I do just get that. Again, it's for protection. I can ditch, well, that's mainly destruction effect, but it could be battle as well. If I want to get destroyed by battle, just ditch it off to my Fuma. Fuma gets destroyed. I could summon a Nishi. If this gets destroyed, it's kind of fine. And I keep it on the board with that Fuma for that reason. Just more bodies on the board to deal with the blue eyes. Now I'm guessing he does concede because I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure why. I guess he just didn't have the hand. But still, it's the reason why I wanted to show you that isn't because he conceded super early. It's because the kind of to show what kind of a board state you want to set up in different kinds of matchups, right? That's kind of what I was on about. So against Yusei Fudo, not sure what this one is. I'm not sure about this one, but we'll see. So this is a bit of a suboptimal hand. There's no apparent way of getting out Shien. So a bit of a poor hand. This is where with this sort of version of the deck, it could be very beneficial to put in one Kagamusha, I think it is, the 2-star tuner for 6 Sams. In those rare situations where you don't have the ability to, and just having a 2-star tuner to get out with Dojo on those rare occasions can really be a benefit, because other than that, it's a pretty solid board state. If I can get out a Shien and a Fuma on the board, it's pretty solid. Reversing Kokai Miru Ice. Now, this is a Kokai Miru player. So he summons a second Ice. Activates his monster's effect. He pops the Fuma, which I do think was a mistake. I think he's hoping to sort of just get it out of the way because his hand is a little bit bad. And I'm okay with him using Ice's effect because his hand quality, his hand size is getting really low. So pops the Fuma. I go for this in defense mode. It's got that 2k defense that Ice can't get over. I do just suspect that he's going to attack into this. He activates Ice's effect again and puts a wall in there. And I use my Fuma to protect. And then that gets destroyed because he has no support in his hand. Which, you could argue that was a bit of a brick, but that's also just kind of a byproduct of those Kokai Miru spell support cards getting limited / semi-limited. It reduces the consistency of the deck, so you could argue, well, he just had a bad hand. If he had a better hand, he would have been fine. Maybe, but it still applies that that's just how the deck sometimes has to deal with. Like, I had a pretty poor hand as well. He had a kind of poor hand, but I think investing that much into the Ice wasn't the way of going about it, because I still had decent protection. Now, with the Fuma, I have 4 tokens on the Dojo. I get my Shien, and this game's pretty much over. Unless he has a Sphere Karibo, which I don't think he does. Although it's not impossible. Again, Sphere Karibo is probably just something that you want to put in your deck for a lot of different matchups. It can help against, it could help against Neos decks. It could help Silver 6 Sams. It's pretty versatile in what it can do. So that was the Yusei Fudo. And then I versed Crowler, which I'm fairly certain was Ancient Gears. It had his Fairs versus Ancient Gears. It's tough because they do have Like, obviously, if you get a really strong start and they get a weak start, it will go in your favor. If they get a strong start and you get a weak start, it'll go in their favor. But just in a vacuum, their Reactor Dragon is going to be bigger than your Inishi. Even if you were to run the Tai... Well, not Inishi, what am I talking about? Shien. Even if you were to run the tie that binds variant, it would only go up to 2800. It's just not enough. So you've got to rely on your dual wields and your Inishis to take out the ancient gears, obviously. I'm not sure how that fares with Fortress and whether they might be immune to those effects, but I do draw a fairly poor hand. There's no way of getting out my Xian. So I just summon the Inishi and dual wield and prep for their board. Now, he does go for the double cyclone on what I'm assuming is going to be a fortress. Targets my dual wield. I can chain the dual wield to bounce that. And that way, I use up one double cyclone. It's less likely he'll be able to pop his spells now. I did suspect he was going to have a Wyvern, which is unfortunate. So right now, I'm expecting that. I can't anticipate that that's going to be another double cyclone. So I know that drawing another spell here is kind of a dead draw. So we're in a really tough spot versus Ancient Gears because of that inherent boost that you get from the castle. And he can basically, if I want to get out my Xian the most optimal way, I'm going to have to use spell support, and his board is now set up so that as soon as I play any of the spells, he'll be able to chain his fortress to mine, and I know he has a reactor in hand. So spell cards are kind of a dead draw. I don't draw a spell. Again, it's a pretty rough starting hand, but you know, other players experience that and they still make the best of it. So that's what I try and do. I summon a couple. I use Kageki's effect, summon Fuma. I figure my only real chance is to pull another Inishi and try and deal a lot of damage this turn. Because I might not, at this stage, be able to summon my Xian, so I kind of just have to go for it another way. So you can crash your Fuma to force the summon from your deck. You take a lot of damage in the process, but that's kind of a thing that you can do if you can afford the life point loss. Now what happens here is pretty interesting, and it's not something I'd really ever experienced, but it's good to note in case you happen to go up against it. Inichi can banish 2 6Ms from the graveyard and bounce one of their cards, one of their monsters, back to their hand, but it needs another 6M on the field to do it. So basically, I activate my Nishi's effect. He chains a Bad Aim, and Bad Aim, when your opponent's card effect is activated, target one card on the field other than that card and destroy it. So he targets my Kigeki. The Kigeki gets destroyed, and because there's no longer another 6M on the field, the Inishi's effect doesn't go through, it doesn't complete. So I just scooped there because that was a loss for me. Straight up. You could say it was premature, but because I had summoned, I had given him 2 tokens on his castle. He would have been able to Reactor Dragon next turn anyway. And yeah, that was a loss for me. So that was an interesting thing. I didn't anticipate that to happen. I thought it might go through anyway because I'd already initiated it. You must control a face-up 6AM monster with a different name to activate and resolve the effect. But because it couldn't resolve because there was no longer that extra 6AM, it obviously didn't go through. So that's an interesting interaction there with Bad Aim. I think Bad Aim is a little bit underrated. It can be pretty handy. Anyway, those are those matchups. Those are those replays. I hope you enjoyed. I tried to get as many meta matchups as I can because I don't think I went up against Dark Lords, but I went up against Neo, so I went up against Blue Eyes, I went up against Ancient Gears, which is still relevant. I think versus Dark Lords, 6 Sams would also struggle, just because they can spam out so many big monsters, and then if you wanted a beatdown variant, it's very easy to get over Shien, and it has a lot of spammability, and then they can activate their traps on the field, and they can also activate them from the graveyard when they can't be negated. So it's a pretty tough matchup in my opinion, Dark Lords. But yeah, that's the video guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.